Welcome back to Beyond the Breach podcast. David Chornitsky here from Armor Cybersecurity.
Arani Adhikari, the Chief Strategy Officer at Armor Cybersecurity.
And just to remind to folks that who we are a cybersecurity company based out of Toronto, having clients today across very different industries, across very different geographies in North America, Latin America, Europe, and expanding beyond that. And we are here today to have an interesting topic because we see in our practice all the time, we meeting clients that heard about cybercrime, but most of the time they even didn't hear about cybersecurity, and they have a couple of words here and there, like we come
to jargons,
jargons that they're picking up, and they feel dangerous. And many times, once you have this overconfidence, it can actually cost you dearly in your business. And I joke a lot of times that instead of being in cybersecurity, we're actually in education business because we go to clients, we meet with them, and we educate them. And eventually, one of the biggest things that we see people that never did anything around cybersecurity is like, oh, I need penetration testing. And then we're sitting down and say, okay, Mr. CEO or CFO, let's have a chat. And this is where we as a team many times spending the longest time to ask them question, do you understand what is a vulnerability scan? Oh, I need that too. Okay, so let's have a chat about that. So, and there is a big confusion of people that not coming from the industry. What is vulnerability scan or assessment versus penetration testing? And in a nutshell, not to get too technical, vulnerability scanning, it's typically tool-based assessment of your external posture, of your internal network or applications, that extracting you very long list of all known vulnerabilities based on technology name, version, and specifically what vulnerabilities known attributed to those versions. And pretty much, it's not pretty picture once you're doing it for first time for a client that never did it before. Versus penetration testing or pen test, it's by the way, we got a lot of complaints from last podcast that we're using way too many acronyms. We'll try to
limit those acronyms.
If you'll use it, we'll try to explain. And penetration testing usually use vulnerability scanning as a first step, one of the first steps. Penetration test is usually more labor intense, relying on humans. I'll put the asterisk here. A lot of companies attempting today to automate it and mechanize it, and it's actually the right direction to go. But still, there is no replacement for good experienced penetration tester that actually know what they're doing. And there are many of them, and we'll cover in a bit what kind of penetration testings are there. So eventually, if you're doing vulnerability scan as a step one, improving your cyber posture, it's a fantastic step. We don't recommend many times to do penetration testing to a clients because if you have a lot of vulnerabilities that you didn't patch, most probably good penetration tester will exploit it. And maybe to explain a bit more what kind of penetration testings are out there, Rani, maybe you can walk us through those types.
Yeah, absolutely. So in general, when you talk about pen tests or penetration testing, there are a number of different ways of doing it. Today's episode, we're going to cover red team. Right, this is one of the most interesting ones, and by far the most challenging one to do it. Right, it's a red team. So, but then there are different versions as well, and as it comes to different colors, like there is blue team, there is purple team, and again there are a lot of jargons out in the industry, right, that we need to familiarize ourselves, right? So let's talk about what a red team is, right? So a red team is an actual simulation of how a hacker or an external threat actor will break into an organization. A blue team is essentially on the other side defending the organization from this. So think of it, if your organization has a security operations center, if they have a IT team, they are the blue team who is defending against it, right? And then you have a mix of red and blue where, we are being inventive with the colors, but, it's a purple team exercise, right? A purple team exercise is an announced red team, right? Whereby the red team operator is trying to break in, the blue team operator is trying to defend. But at the end of the day, the thing is, it's a joint simulation, right? So you actually at the end of the day will know what are the kind of techniques the red team used and what are the techniques the blue team can use to defend themselves. It's a joint exercise, right? Think of it this way, right? But the beauty of red team, right? Like as you said, vulnerability scans, is the first step. A lot of clients often confuse between vulnerability scan, pen test, red team. Just because the terminology is out there, a lot of clients come to us asking for red team. But we don't say that, we don't recommend doing red team as a step one. Why? Because if there is an experienced operator trying to break into an organization that have never done a pen test before, that do not have a mature cyber program, most likely you will break in, right? So you're going to spend, and by no means these are cheap. These are not cheap exercises. Red team can be a costly exercise. Now, if you want a return on investment, a proper ROI on the testing that you're doing, you should first start off with a vulnerability scan, a pen test, and then focus on red team.
And maybe, Arani, let's also clarify for the viewers. Pen tests usually have very specific targets.
Yes.
Like, here's a system or here's IP, test this one if you can find anything. But red team, I think
there's a avenue of stealth over there, right? So in a pen test, again, just going by the maturity progression, right? In a pen test, once you're done with the scan, the idea is, can you exploit those vulnerabilities? And when we say exploit, can you actually execute the exploits on the vulnerabilities, right? In order to gain foothold of the system, right? And that's where in a pen test, you generally stop. Once you have gained access to a system, that's when you stop, right? But let's take a step back and see why we are doing this, right? We are simulating a real-time red team attack is because that's how a threat actor, as we said, will break into the organization. It's like breaking into your house, right? When you have a house and you have doors, you have windows, it's locked, there are monitoring systems around it, right? But when a thief is trying to break in, it won't be on the day of breaking in. They are not coming in gung-ho and just breaking out in the door, right? What they will be doing, they're taking a step-by-step approach of breaking in. So they will be first coming in and looking for, how many windows are there? Who is coming in and out, right? When do they lock the house? When do the lights go out, right? They're observing the house and the pattern and the behavior of the residents of the house. Once that is done, right? Once they have seen that, look, this door is open from so and so time and this window is open from so and so time, they know that is their initial vector or, way to break in to the house. And once you're in the house, that's basically access in our world. That is basically access to the system, right? When you get a foothold or, you get access to a system, a typical pen test, that's where we would stop it. But in a red team, you would go out and we see what else can we do. Can we get their data? Can we get all their systems? Can we get their passwords? Can we get their invoices? Can we get their finances, right? And once that is done...
And of course, what kind of damage we can cause.
Absolutely.
And in red team, it's important to mention that there is no damage caused.
It's controlled.
It's controlled execution.
Exactly, right? And once that is done, right? So the idea is, again, you stole the data, great, right? But how do you get that data out, right? What are the 10 different channels that you can steal the data or steal those, exfiltrate those data out from the organization? Now that's a life cycle of a red team, right? That is how the red team will occur. And again, this is controlled chaos, right? We call it controlled chaos because, again, the idea is, it's not, again, we're not going gung-ho in there. It's a time-bound exercise, and we're doing this exercise to simulate exactly how a hacker would come in, right?
And maybe to add here, many times we see organizations that they actually, in my opinion, and Dharani, like I would love to hear your opinion here as well, certain role players inside of organization are actually afraid of this type of approach. They want to play it safe, just to say, test that section, give me the results. But if you're saying, hey, but you think like normative human being, criminals think differently. They don't care about rules. They don't care about your regulations. They will use techniques that actually will get to to the goals that they're putting for themselves, halt your operation or get your data.
Yep.
But a lot of people actually withdrawing back and saying, "Oh my God!" Like my thing, it's I don't want to call it job security, but many times maybe they're afraid to show
What comes out.
What comes out.
Yeah, a lot of times, and let's dive into that, right? A lot of times, why have people started doing more and more vulnerability assessment or pen test, right? Because there is a regulatory aspect and a compliance aspect to it, right? Cyber insurance is mandating these things. Regulators are mandating these things, right? So there are a lot of people who are doing this exercise to check a box, right? There are few, global regulations that have come out that is mandating red team a bit. Not in US, not in Canada. It's mostly in the European side, UK side. But there are now regulations who are catching up, who are saying you must be doing red team and in these manners, right? More and more these regulatory drivers are there, more people will start adopting it. Now, in a red team, the difference is again when you're testing one system, right, where you know what kind of issues might come in, versus a red team which is pretty open wide, and there are a lot of other gaps that will come out. It's not only technical gaps that will come out. There will be process level gaps that will come out. There will be physical security gaps that will come out. There's a behavior aspect, human behavior. And we'll give some examples of them, of what can be exploited. Those will come out as well. The problem statement becomes then how does that one small team of IT people can fix all these things, right? So when it comes out in such a report, there will be a lot of recommendations that will be there. But how do you deal with that?
Let's spice it up even further, because a lot of people think, oh, here's IP. And again, in typical penetration testing.
Yeah.
Here's 30 IPs, 50 IPs, whatever. Test those.
Yeah.
In red team, and maybe Rani, let's talk a bit about techniques, right?
Yeah,
What kind of techniques we see in the market, what we use in our practice? Yes, you can test remotely access to external systems, and you can look for angles, right? You can look at dark web, whatever already leaked, and basically see how do you leverage this information to get in, or inside you're saying, hey, you're inside of the network, right? Go get to domain control credentials so you can take the network down.
Exactly.
But Arani, I think a lot of people kind of understand that. Talk a bit about
Let's deep dive. Let's deep dive.
Let's deep dive, and then let's show what else can be done.
Absolutely, right? So let's go back to that example of that house getting broken into, right? What we described, and the technical term for that is a kill chain, right? It's again it's a military term out there which basically says how do you deconstruct a cyber attack into different phases, right? So, and why do you do that is because not only to understand and observe the different techniques and tactics used in each of those phases, so that you can build defenses against it ultimately. But the reason the kill chain is very important is because where do you simulate from, right? A hacker breaking in from outside, they will try to go, they will try to social engineering routes, right? They will try to break into systems that are exposed, right? Or they will try to physically break in. Right? These are if you think on an organization, if you think of a house, again, that example of a house, but what are the three different ways, a threat actor will come into a company, right? They can try to social engineering and use phishing techniques, right? And, get an employee to dump their passwords, give their passwords, then they log in from there and move laterally from there, right? They can exploit a vulnerability on a internet facing system, right? It has to be facing internet because that's where they're coming in from. Right? They exploit that, they land in a system and they expand from there. And the third way is actually physical, right? Physically break into an organization, right? And install, right, some sort of a device that they can access to from outside. And for viewers, like these sort of devices are very common now. At one point, it was not very common. Now you can, find YouTube videos of how to make these devices, right? But there are a lot of sophisticated, devices as well. So you can plant that device once you physically break in, and then access from outside, right? Now that's your entry in, right?
By the way, do not try that at home. It's not really legal, but for testing purposes,
absolutely good legal disclaimer right there. Do not try this at home. Ask us. We can help you on this.
We can guide you on
yes.
for testing what can be done. And
yes. Now once you break in, where do you go from there, right? Now, as you said, like an insider scenario, right? So we have done, again, there are various, versions and depths of red team that you can do. We can simulate various scenarios. And one of the scenarios we simulate is as an insider, as an employee in the organization with general access, no special access, right? We are day one of our employee, right? They get their laptops, they get their mobile phones, they have their Outlook installed, they have their systems installed. What can they do from there? Right? So we simulate a typical, so we are given essentially a same access as any other employee on day one. And then we break in from there, right? Then we download various tools and try to bypass various techniques, bypass various defense, and then ultimate objective. And we'll talk about objective setting of a red team as well, right? Is can we get access to their domain controller? Can we get access to some credentials, some passwords that can be used to move laterally?
To your IP that you spent 4 years developing and gazillions of dollars of
Can we steal those out?
Can we steal those out?
Yeah. And we have simulated some scenarios where, they are focused on data as an example, right? So we have simulated, again, this is a very scenario driven sort of a red team. But if you remember that engagement, when we went to the client, it's a financial client, we went in there, the whole purpose was to see what are the different ways, what are the 10 different ways I can steal data from the organization. Can I exfiltrate files through Teams, as an example? Can I exfiltrate files through some web share, random web share, right? So we simulated the various ways people can steal data from the organization. The reason the client was actually doing this is because they were going for data loss prevention the next year. And this outcome, right, the results that we gave drove those areas because now they know where the gaps are. And now they can implement the controls on their data loss prevention strategy for that.
And it's always better that we find it and not a real life hacker that actually will do something malicious with that
information. Will be cheaper, then that will be more expensive.
And Ronnie, maybe let's spend for a second what you said that usually inside of the network, we start red team exercise from getting access with the lowest level of privilege. And there's very specific reason for that. What we're telling our clients that to get from outside of the network, inside of your network, it's actually a matter of time. And we see a lot of companies still believe that they need to build the strongest perimeter and this is a king. Especially like providers that coming from IT background, it's traditionally they've been doing firewalls and everything around firewalls. Look at the organizations today; they're fully distributed. A lot of assets on cloud. Yes, some still have legacy stuff, but we see it shrinking by day. And the biggest resource that attackers have, they're actually time. Once they spend enough time on looking angle how to get from outside inside, and it's always function of how big is the price. If you're building a next gen tech that you're spending a lot of money on R&D and you're building very deep IP, someone who wants to get this IP
they will,
and it will be lesser amount of millions that you need to spend on building it. Actually, will spend on stealing it at cheaper price. Of course, we're talking about technical aspects, but I think one of the engagements, we actually cannot go into too many details, but we deploy also actually live people, right? That you have many times a lot of these companies that building tech, developers going to a bar or other events. We can send a certain type of people that will approach, build a rapport, relationship, and eventually they getting access to their computers. And if you don't protect your assets properly,
they get access. But
they eventually will get access.
And that's how real life a threat actor will operate, right? The physical aspect will come in this panel.
It's like a spy movie, but it's a little.
It's a little simulation. Yes. But that's how a real life threat actor would operate. And that's how I've seen a lot of cases come out, right? And the most recent one actually that we should talk about is, and this actually came out in public as well, right? So North Korean threat actors, right, sending or making through deepfakes, right, posing as employees and getting actual employment in the organization. And when the device, their laptops get shipped to them, they are actually shipped to a warehouse, right, from where there are North Korean hackers who are trying to break into the organization. Now, if you look at that kill chain, that's exactly what we are simulating, right? It's an insider access, right? You have as an employee, have a laptop. on day one, you have certain access, and we try to see how far you can break from there.
I want to scare our viewers for a second. How many of you actually never seen your employee and you just hired remotely? How do you know it's a real employee?
I think everybody is like putting their hands on. Yeah, everybody putting their hands on.
But this is I think this is AI. And again, we said AI. We tried not to say AI on this podcast today, but AI drives a lot of change, and this is just the beginning of capabilities, and we see evolution of deepfakes. But eventually, I'm sure deepfakes will be used more and more in red team exercises as
absolutely.
well. And organizations need really to start thinking about protecting AI. And by the way, not just blocking your employees from uploading stuff to ChatGPT.
Yeah.
It's one of the things.
Yeah.
Be spending a lot of time looking at that, but it's exciting times.
Oh, absolutely. And deepfakes, look, it's another tool, right? Like we talked about, devices or sophisticated devices that are put into a network, or, implants, as we call them. They're put in the network. It will look like any other device that is out there, but will connect back to internet, and it will give an access from outside that threat actor will use to move laterally, right? Now, there are ways to defend against that, right? Traditionally, again, going back to the point, and what we're trying to kind of, educate the users today and, the viewers today is, pen test is not only about software tools, right? Pen test, that's one aspect of it. Ultimately, that's the objective, right? Ultimately, when you exploit a vulnerability from a vulnerability scan results that you have gone from your vendor, right? Ultimately, it's a software-based technique that is used to gain foothold, move laterally, and achieve an objective, whether it's to steal data, whether it's to deploy ransomware, whatever the objective is, right? Steal money, read out invoices, whichever the objective is. But in a basic sense, if you look at it, right, it's beyond just software, right? We are talking about hardware, right? We are talking about deepfakes, right? There's a social engineering aspect to it. People bumping into bars, right? So, when you carry the RFID badges, right, those RFID badges can be cloned, right? And, we have tried techniques of cloning those badges. It's not that difficult.
Sounds like a spy movie.
Exactly. A lot of these will sound like a spy movie, but that's the reality, right?
That's a reality.
And what we are trying to simulate here is, look, are you vulnerable to these techniques? I'll give you a classic example. We were recently reviewing, an audit that the client had done. And when it came to the visiting cards and, the access cards, right, for the visitors, right, they just reviewed, okay, we have access card, who gets access to it and who can print those, right? What we challenge them on is to think, hey, have you actually looked at the encryption of the card, right? Have you actually looked, can this card be cloned easily? Because look, where those visitor badges and those cards get access to are top secret facilities, right? This client did not, right? And the challenge back from them was like, hey, this is not something that we typically test, right? I said exactly the point. That's true. You don't typically test this. That's the reason we are here to challenge you to think on the next direction. This is how the attack is going to evolve, right? If you don't test for this, you are forever going to be in that box that you're not going to test this, and attackers will always exploit this surface.
And this is high security facility. But we also have other clients that in a less secure environment, but they have very big gate with a lot of guards that checking you, but the gate around the facility, maybe it's like 400 by 400 meters, like 1,000 by 1,000 foot for people that think in foots.
Yeah.
But the fence goes like only for one corner. So like they're doing great security at the entrance, but you just can walk around.
Exactly. And talking about some examples, this is a good time to kind of dive into some anonymized examples. Obviously, we are not going to reveal any client names. We are not going to reveal the exact dates and times when this was done. But these are techniques that we have tried in past, right? So like this example, I think we have another client where, the break-in happened because, again, they had access control on the doors, right? But once you're in, once you follow someone or tailgate someone in, the visiting area that they have, right, that had access to a room, right, which has, your network ports that you get access to all their networks from there. So while you have access control on the main areas, the visitor area, which is open to public because that's where people are coming in, that is your reception area, you have network ports exposed over there, which you can connect to. And by the way, that network port is given to give you access to everything.
Because of the flat network. Because it's too expensive to redesign your network and to create segregation. But I think I can give 3 or 4 or more of those, and they're even more juicy because some legacy businesses sometime when Isabella, fake name.
Yes.
At the reception goes to lunch, you just can walk in and
Exactly.
you can connect whatever you want.
Yeah.
Right.
And are people trained? Like you need to ask yourself, right? Are people trained to notice this, right? Is Isabella looking out for this, right? When she's going for lunch, right? She's not.
Being a Canadian, I have to say, Canadians are way too trusting.
Yes.
With a big smile and a little bullshit, you can get almost anywhere, unless it's bigger guys taking security more seriously. But
we can say bullshit on this podcast.
Cut it out. But most of the small and medium businesses, that medium-sized enterprises, traditionally security is not a big.
It's not.
It's not a big thing.
And if you look at security awareness trainings today, you get to know what a phishing is, you get to know what a ransomware is, you get to know about the invoice scams. Are they teaching you, are they showing you what kind of hardware implants can come in? Because we can bring a keyboard that exactly looks like the keyboard for the organization, except it has a keylogger in it, a physical keylogger in it, right? It's very hard to detect those, right? Even visually, it's hard to detect, right? Software-wise, again, very hard to detect them. And at the same time, it's going to do its job, right? That keyboard can keylog all the passwords that you're typing in, everything that you're typing in, and remotely transmit that out of the facility, right? That can happen, right? So, and you today you will find USB cables, like typical iPhone charging USB cables, right? That will be actually a keylogger. You can plug those into a system, and that will actually keylog that system, right? So I think there is a evolution that is needed in security awareness.
This is why we never take anything USB at any conference. You don't know what you bring home. Free tip for all viewers.
We take it, we throw it out.
Donate it.
Yeah. Let somebody else be the victim.
Don't ever use it. And the same with planes, right? Like
absolutely.
People connecting to sockets in planes. It's fantastic.
Planes, airports.
To harvest information.
Absolutely. Even in one of the, again, not naming the brand name, one of the local pizza joint, it's a franchisee and it's all over Canada, in US as well as some places. When you go in, there is this kiosk, right, that you can put your cell phone charger to, right? Most of the times these kiosks are unattended. Nobody's checking on these, right? But people are coming in and they're charging their phones through that, right? They're plugging their phones. They're at a pub, they're at a pizzeria, and they're charging their phones over there, unsuspecting. But you can make that same implant, right, do a lot of damage if they connect something else.
Yeah. So just looking at the time, there are many different techniques that red teamers that know what they're doing can deploy. And we did multiple deployments across very different industries. And there's always something that you find, even in organizations that are very mature and investing a lot of money to improving their security. I think the simple reason, because every technical stack that you see today, every organization is a complex beast. There is a lot of things interconnected, but what is fascinating is how organizations are actually reacting to findings. And maybe let's talk a bit about lesson learned problem. Lesson learned process can be very revealing and unpleasant for some people, but it's interesting to see how people react to it. And let's talk about typical lesson learned.
And in lesson learned, few of the things that we kind of have realized over time, right, is and we have a client right now. They want to do a red team, right? They have never done this before, right? They have done small scans, pen tests from time to time. But they want to do everything at one shot, right? So key lesson number 1, right, is when we go to them and we educate about red team, look, again, this can be costly exercise, right? So we tend to try to have this conversation of what is your objective by doing this, right? Are you looking to do this typically for getting all the findings at once, or do you want to do in a continuous model of a red team, right? Do you want to do piece by piece, scenario by scenarios, right? Maybe on day 1 and in phase 1 we simulate only certain activities. In phase 2 we simulate insiders, right? Phase 3 we simulate social engineering. what that does, right, is it breaks down, it gives you a better value of your budget, right? Better value on the ROI, right? You don't spend a capital amount at once and get so many results, which we'll talk about the reactions in a bit, and then they're lost in the sea of results. You cannot prioritize, you cannot chew it down, because red team, again, it's a organization wide attack. It's not only attack on IT, it's IT on corporate security, it's on the employees, right? It's a multifaceted attack angle, and the different vectors that are tried in there, right? So you can't chew it down. So the idea is we educate, the way we educate our clients, unless they have a extremely mature cyber program, don't attempt to do red team all at once, right? Break it down in scenarios, understand, and that starts with threat modeling exercise, maybe a future topic that we can talk about. But we break those down and then we execute each one of those patterns. And then when the results come out, that's when people.
It comes back to my favorite saying.
Yes.
How do you swallow an elephant? Piece by piece.
Piece by piece.
And I think this is
piece by piece. And but when the results come out, right? It oftentimes there is, at the start of a lot of these exercises, there is a lot of denial, right? We have gone to a lot of security people who believe their security is the best in the world. For all viewers and all for future security professionals, one thing to say: do not ever make the mistake of thinking your security is the best, because it's not, right? Somebody out there will outsmart you, will break in that sense of false confidence has been the reason a lot of companies have gone bust.
Actually, I have a good example here. In my previous life, one of the CIO of very large organization, I will not go to industry because it might be identifiable, asked us to test with red team exercise if his CISO doing a good job. Long story short, it ended up in 9 months of 7 red teamers bringing every 2 weeks insane amount of results that this mega organization couldn't keep up with fixing.
And that's the reality, right? That is what is going to happen. Again, do not make the mistake of thinking the security is the best, because again, when we give the results out and when we actually show you the impact of a result, because look, at the end of the day, a pen test is going to be a document, right? It's going to be a report, right? Which is going to say, look, these are the 5 different things that may happen. In a red team and in pen test exercises, we are actually showing you that this will happen, right? And that's where the difference comes in, right? Again, there are various costs associated with it. We recommend companies to fix things first, right? Get your remediations in first, fix programs first, and then test it, right? Because, you can break down a door, if it doesn't have a lock, it doesn't have any strong hinges. But first invest in getting a lock and the hinges, and then let's test whether this lock and the hinges are working well. Because otherwise the door will get broken into.
And maybe to add last point for lessons learned, being in a set of mind to understand that I might have a problem. Let's bring experts that will test if I have problem, yes or not. And if they do find a problem, I think it's fighting back, saying, "Hey, it's not true." And we've seen those cases in some. Why are you spending your budget? Like if you don't want to improve, why are you going through this exercise? And organizations that embrace approach that we might have problems, let's test it, and it should not be personal. And we've seen some organizations, like people getting defensive. It's never personal. Like no one knows everything, and it's like leverage expertise of experienced red teamers that you bring to your organization to make it better. Because if they found it, hackers would found it as well.
They will.
And remember, hackers have unlimited time. Red team is, unfortunately, it's many times also limited budget or time going to continuous exercise. We see that trend. I think this is the right thing. Because
that's the right one. Yeah.
Because with all shift left and the rapid deployments, the DevOps deploying stuff, you need to be on top of it all the time. And this is, by the way, where red team, blue team comes, purple team that constantly looking for that,
exactly.
Especially in the mature organizations.
Exactly.
Maybe just to finish off in terms of it's a controlled chaos. But if you don't embrace chaos, hackers don't care that you guys might have like the best policies and the best controls, and you pat yourself on the shoulder. But embracing this controlled chaos proactively, what makes you less attractive target maybe versus
It
competition?
is the cost of the attack, right?
It's a cost of the
Make the cost of the attack higher for the threat actors, right? So that they move on, right? So that they don't see a way to break into your organization without using very expensive zero days as an example, right? Like if you're not that attractive of a target, which most of the clients are, right? They won't try to break in.
Yeah, and we try to keep this topic light. We could go much deeper, and
Yes, but I think we're up on time.
we have limited time here, and we also wanted to keep it informative and hopefully clear to people that not coming from technical background, and I'm especially talking about IT experts that usually are very good at IT, but they don't have this type of expertise in their companies. We love to help those guys to understand it. CFOs, COOs, chief marketing officers, owners of the businesses, it is important to test how well your business is ready for next cyber attack. And like we just mentioned, that you need to increase this cost of attack so it will become less attractive for malicious actors and hackers. And 10.3 trillion, it's my favorite number that I repeat this year. Last year ended up with 10.3 trillion damages to economy. None of the industries secure, none of geography secure, none of the size of the businesses. A lot of guys saying, "Oh, I'm too small; it will not happen." If you're too small, it happens to you the worst because it hits you harder.
And that's actually a good point, David, because that's actually our next episode. So thank you so much for the time. Thank you for the session, right? Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening to our to this episode. We'll see you the next time.
Thank you.